This is how Steven Stayner looked when he disappeared at age 7 years ago. This is Steven today.
My father was a hero. He saved another child's life. Looked up to him for that.
2 young boys are back home, safe, well, and nobody understands why they were kidnapped in the first place.
Is there any motive for the taking of these 2 boys?
That's the question at this time.
They weren't mistreated.
Yeah, I recognize him when I see him. The shaggy hair. Yeah, or the mustache.
How do you feel now?
We're just very thankful that he took good care of him. That's a blessing in itself, I think.
As kids, they want us to, believe a happy fairy tale kind of, ending. And it just saddens me to think that my dad had to go through all that pain and suffering just to get his story told.
Now, where were we? When Steve comes home, I think maybe I can expand that last scene, have them have more communication.
If there were beats along the way of people trying to make it all seem like normal, that not working, Hayes trying to reach him,
Maybe Dell tries to reach him.
Maybe Dell run away. So that
it could be kind of interesting if Dell tried to reach him, because one thing that Steven resented most of all when he came home was that Dell could not adjust to the fact that he had grown up. He was only 14, but he had grown up.
Yeah.
And Dell still wanted him to be his little Stevie.
Last time I saw you, I never thought about you being big enough for football. I thought baseball, maybe.
Nah.
He's still dealing with him as a 5-year-old kid.
Mm-hmm.
Because what he's doing is he's totally denying reality.
Prayed a lot, and so did thousands of people up and down this valley for this little man. And he's home.
It paid off.
It paid off, yes it did.
You happy to be home?
Yes, I am.
I've seen some interviews when he first came home. My aunts and my grandma, they did a lot of interviews. It's hard on people. We've never really wanted to bring any kind of attention to ourselves, but it just kind of started snowballing because there was just so many eyes on the story.
Steven Stayner was in school today here at Merced Union High School, but his mother says she doesn't want anybody interviewing him anymore while he's in class.
Once he started school in 9th grade, they followed him. They wanted to see him first day of school.
Steve is a 9th grader at Merced High School's East Campus. We caught up with him in woodshop, last class of the day, where Steve seemed just as removed and oblivious to the media as he's been since last Sunday, the day he entered the media spotlight.
Back then, the schools were not enclosed in fences. Well, you could just walk in off the street and start asking questions.
The science class was okay, but I don't really like science that much.
What do you like? You have any idea what you're interested in at this point? Technical things or academic things?
I like the sports and wood shop. I like to work with wood.
Indications are that his sporadic schooling of the past 7 years has left him well behind his current classmates. He'll get tutoring to catch up.
A lot of other kids envied him or were jealous of the attention that he was getting.
And after that first day of science, math, and the other classes, some time with a new friend and a ride home from his father, Delbert Stayner.
You just wanted to get Steve into therapy so that he could get through it. And Del did not like therapists or psychologists or psychiatrists, especially. And he fought Steve getting therapy.
I think the way you look at things like that back then was, we don't go throwing your stuff out there like that, you know. So that's why my dad was against it, I guess.
You're going to read these interviews with Steven.
Okay. Oh, I didn't want therapy. No, there was a lot of suggestions of getting therapy from people. I just said no. I mean, I'm doing just fine, and so I don't feel I need it, you know? The cadence, how he talks is interesting, you know? He's very blunt, very curt, and I will say it's emotional though. I mean, I'm feeling stuff I wasn't expecting to feel. To have to deal with it at such a young age and in such a public display. I mean, he was all over the news. It was, you know, he did not get to go through that process in a quiet, you know, in quiet solitude.
Steve was 14, almost 15 years old, and a different person, totally different person. He would start to talk about things that he had done as Dennis, and people would begin to think that he was, you know, enjoying his life as Dennis.
Hey, get it. Yeah. The only time I ever noticed a Dennis was when he didn't answer because he would be zoned into the TV.
The good parts, not the bad, the good.
We wanted to go back to our normal lives because that's what kids want. They want their normal life back and just want to go about their day just like anybody else. Kind of hard to do that when you got cameras everywhere, though.
How are the kids treating you at school?
Just fine.
All right, good luck.
You know, we all got a little jealous also. A lot of attention went to Steven. I was jealous. Jody was jealous. And my older brother, Kerry, was off. He was very off. He got annoyed with the constant media attention.
Hey! Steve? Yeah. I'm your brother. Kerry.
So this is an interview with Kerry Stayner at what age?
Mid-20s.
Mid-20s, yeah. Okay. All right. Interesting. The way I see it, just about anybody would have done the same thing in his shoes. It was wrong what was going on. So he turned it right. Anybody would do it if they had any moral fiber to them.
All right.
He was just a normal, everyday kid, and the media blew it out of proportion with the hero.
On behalf of the city of Ukiah, I want to thank Steve for starting out as a victim himself and becoming a hero.
All of a sudden, Steve was getting all those gifts, getting all these clothes, getting all this attention. I guess I was jealous. I'm sure I was. He deserves everything you got.
Great. Can we do that one more time?
Reading this, there's a lot of ways. He deserves everything you got. Or he deserves everything you got. He deserved it. From my perspective, as an actor, jumping into Cary Stayner, I was the supportive brother. I loved my brother. I missed my brother. I wanted to welcome him home. And yet we did see glimpses of Cary feeling neglected, Cary feeling not important.
What really should we have done? Do you overprotect him? Do you, like we did, just shove him out there and say, here, tell the world your story? There's a lot of things I wish we'd done differently. Number one, I would have just, when Steve came home, I would have shown the media that, yes, he's home and we're so happy, and then I would have disappeared. I would have just fallen off the face of the earth and gone someplace else, just to save Steve from all this publicity that followed him to the very end.
The district attorney says there's little likelihood that Murphy and Kenneth Parnell will be tried together. No matter what happens, the strength of both cases rely heavily on the interpretation of, hi, how are ya? On the interpretation of the statute of limitations.
And so the act is done. Both boys are home safely. Now comes the laborious part. It's going to happen here over the next several months to determine what the act was, whether in fact Parnell did it, and if so, what the penalty will be.
What was it like living with him? All my life. What did you do while you were near the beach? Did you play much?
No.
Do you remember what you did at all? Did you play by the waterfall?
Yeah.
Did he buy you new clothes, toys? Did you have those things to play with?
Yeah.
Parnell, he wasn't around. She was usually just working.
Did he ever hurt you?
No.
Did he ever try to touch you in a way he shouldn't have?
Police say Parnell is a model prisoner, very quiet, and has declined to talk to anyone but a lawyer. Parnell was convicted in another abduction and served time, but that was years ago. Friends and officials wonder, could it be this was a man who simply wanted sons and believed this was the only way?
Stephen was quiet and seemed a lot like Mr. Parnell and a little bit withdrawn, but...
Did it seem like father and son that you're accustomed to seeing?
Well, it sure did, because the boy had to go ask Dad everything he did.
He was a strange fellow.
He seemed friendly.
And what did their relationship seem to be?
I can't say.
Did they seem like father and son, really?
I can't say.
The big question now is a motive. Why would anyone want to do such a thing?
See, what happened was I didn't want to talk about it. And so when the police asked me if there was any abuse involved or anything, I denied that there was any. For the first month after my return, it was basically Parnell was thought of as somebody who was looking for a family without a mother, without being married and stuff, And then the pictures showed up, and that's when they called me into the police station and started asking me about it.
Steven. Steven.
Here's what's going to happen.
Would you come with me, please?
The people who tune into this show are going to know that it's about a guy who kidnapped a kid and molested him.
Where are we going?
We do have to be very careful. The last thing that we want to be accused of anyway is sensationalized.
Oh, absolutely. But the problem that we have to face up to is it exists.
Is this Kenneth Parnell?
There are some pictures.
Are they being entered as evidence?
I don't know that.
Have you seen the pictures?
I have not seen any pictures.
It's been learned that Polaroid pictures of little Steven Stayner in the nude were found in Parnell's cabin.
How do you say it? They wanted to know how he had been molested or if he had been molested, and we were adamant we weren't going to talk about it. And that's when the media started getting more mean about it and wanting and demanding to know exactly what had happened to him and how and why. Let's get into the nitty-gritty of what had happened to this poor kid, and let's, publicize that.
Charges against Parnell also have been expanded to include conspiracy and lewd and lascivious acts upon a child.
What do you think of the charges against you, Mr. Parnell?
I think it'd be kind of embarrassing for Steven to have to say all these things in front of a battery of newsmen, cameras, and the public. Naturally, it would be better if it were not publicized.
Kenneth Parnell sat quietly in his white prison suit as the judge imposed the maximum punishment he could for the kidnapping of 5-year-old Timmy White last year.
Term of 7 years.
You got 7 for Timmy. You'll get a lot more for what he done to Steve.
The man convicted of kidnapping a 5-year-old boy from Ukiah, California, is now back on trial.
Stayner himself was the first witness to enter the courtroom this morning.
The young man is viewed as the key witness in the Parnell trial.
I didn't want to get on the stand and talk about it. I fought it the whole way.
He appeared somewhat nervous at times while testifying, but showed no emotion either for or against Parnell himself. Stayner says he obeyed Parnell's orders not to leave or talk about his past, but he never said why. Kenneth Parnell is accused of forcing Stayner to perform sodomy and oral sex acts. With a strained, hesitant whisper, Stayner confirmed this.
Yeah.
It is the judgment of this court that you be confined to the state prison of California with a term of 84 months.
He was given 7 more years, but
You've already been sentenced to the maximum 84 months in the kidnapping of Timmy White. The court is compelled under current statutes to order the
it was the second offense, so he was only required to serve like 1/3 of that.
a sentence of only 20 months.
I mean, it just boggles the mind.
That he told me what happened. Oh, what do you do when you already know? You can't go back.
People are going to come up to him, ask questions and stuff, and, you know, ask him real personal questions, and he might get, you know, people gang up, you know, well, not gang up, but come around him and ask him questions.
Kids at school would call him a faggot and all the mean things that they could.
We have a good bunch of kids at our school, and therefore I see no problem with it at all. In the immediate future, of course, Steve's going to have a hard time not having girls chase him down the street and this kind of thing, but other than that, there's no problem.
Having all of the information out, it was painful for Steve, which affected how he continued to grow. He drank heavy, a lot of alcohol and a lot of pot.
He loved his pot. He didn't really like drinking, but he still drank. A lot of pills. I don't know what else he really did. Like, you remember him telling me he did Black Beauties, or no, PCP, or both. I can't remember.
He was a rabble-rouser. I mean, he wrecked a car or two. The next 4 or 5 years was really rather chaotic. There was girl after girl after girl after girl. Jody was just the one that caught him.
What are you doing here?
I don't know.
I think I have to do something more demonstrably reforming through his girlfriend, serious girlfriend that he married.
Do you remember me? I'm Jody Edmonton.
Maybe we can introduce Jody earlier.
Yeah.
Hey, there he is.
Maybe I can have Jody at the school and be one of the persons who says, leave him alone, you idiot.
Yeah.
Baby, what'd you do? You forget your purse?
Will you stop it? You can't help what happened.
But that's not what happened. My mom didn't know my dad when they were younger.
None of that is true at all. We met where he worked, and we met through my girlfriend.
My dad was working at a butcher shop. They fell in love, or at least I think they did.
I love you, Steven.
I think that'd be nice.
I love you too.
Yeah, totally fictional, of course, but anyway, we're getting closer and closer to fiction all the time, which we've got to do. So let's just grin and bear it.
It sounds pretty romantic, you know. 2 young kids that fell in love. And more interesting than just meeting at a butcher shop, I guess.
Want to go out sometime?
Okay.
Great.
Steven was so much more grounded than the other kids. He was real calm, almost eerily calm. He was so calm. I was 16, and he was 3 years older than me, so he was 19. He didn't mince no words. He just asked me out. And it was kind of on from there for a while.
He was ready to settle down and stop that wild, crazy life. He was really in love and wanted to start a family.
I ended up getting pregnant with Ashley, my daughter. We got married, and soon after that, I got pregnant again with Steven Jr.
He was a great father. He would take Ashley. She was 1, 2 years old, and she'd get whiny. And he'd make her into an airplane, and he would fly her around the apartment.
I thought it was just the funniest thing, you know.
By the time he was through, she was giggling and having a great time. And crisis averted.
I was laying on his chest, and I could hear his heartbeat. I remember that. Being able to hear that.
He was a good dad. He was a good family man. It came natural to him.
He became a a husband and then a father, and then had to knuckle down and decide what he was going to do with his life.
Now the bizarre story of Steven Stayner is coming to television. That's our inside story for today.
Screenwriter J.P. Miller conducted hours of interviews with Carrie, Steven, and their parents, Delbert and Kay, about the ordeal.
We went down to L.A. and we were on the set and we met all the actors and all of that sort of stuff. You know, Steve thought it was just great, and Jody was just over the moon because she saw somebody that had a telephone in their car.
They treated us really nicely. They made us director's chairs, and so I was just happy sitting in my chair the whole time.
The two-part drama is called I Know My First Name is Steven. It stars Corin Nemec as the teenage Steven.
Playing Steven Stayner, I mean, that was just incredible. I mean, it was the biggest deal in Hollywood. And I think that every actor that was worth their salt wanted to be that character.
I do recall seeing the family on the set. I think they kept kind of a division. They didn't want too much mingling.
You say he looks just like you did at age 14?
Basically, yeah. Now 23, Steve is married with 2 kids and looks forward to a career in law enforcement. During the filming of the miniseries, he even had an opportunity to portray a police officer.
He was going to law enforcement classes out at the college here in Merced at the time. He played a cop in his homecoming scene. It was definitely something you don't forget.
In a lot of ways, you know, and he talked back to his parents, which I wouldn't do. I would never, you know, I just it's not me. Really, I just kind of look at it as just a movie. Well, you know, what happened to me is in the past, and I really don't dwell on it.
I've watched the movie one time. And to tell you the truth, I was not that impressed with it because it depicted the family different from what we actually were. It was a little twisted and ridiculous. I know it pissed Delbert off some fierce.
Del, we've got to try to have
Like we had $40 for Christmas one year.
I don't know if I can do it.
We were never that destitute, but they depicted it that way because it made it more sensational, I guess.
Del. Del!
I was just like, that's Hollywood, you know, that's the way they do things.
Okay. I wish I was dead.
You've got to hold on.
I mean, that's unheard of. For, you know, that many people all to be watching the same thing at the exact same time. It's like the Super Bowl, you know?
Don't look for silver linings or cotton candy. You know, I know my first name is Steven. The two-part miniseries about a lost child, starting tomorrow night on NBC, hasn't any sweet tooth. In real life, in a series of motel rooms and shacks all over Northern California, he was sexually molested.
It really generated a lot of attention to such a touchy, you know, subject that nobody wants to talk about.
It was just very, trustful of him. I was raised that way, that adults don't lie.
That's what was making people start talking about it was Steven. All his interviews in this movie, that was his therapy that helped him through everything.
Any chance I get to talk about it, I think really helps me deal with the problem. The more I talk about it, the better I can deal with it.
He wanted it to make a difference with people. That was his goal. You know, it was not just to put money in his pocket. He wanted it to serve a purpose. And I think he did.
And Hollywood got an early wake-up call this morning as the nominations for TV's top prizes were announced.
It was nominated for 4 Emmy Awards.
Please welcome Corky Nemec, folks. Corky.
I did a show called I Know My First Name is Steven, a miniseries.
Thank you. That was about a kid who was kidnapped.
Yeah, it was a true story about the boy Steven Stayner whom passed away the night before the Emmys. Everybody was really hoping to win something because we wanted to dedicate it to him and everything. He was hit by a guy who ran a stop sign. He was riding his motorcycle.
Wow.
California police are searching this morning for the hit-and-run driver of a car that killed former kidnap victim Steven Stayner on Saturday.
Steven was on his way home from work. And the guy pulled out right in front of him. And he died there on the scene. I will never forget the day that it happened.
Steven was on his way home from work, and I was on my way to work, and I saw him. I didn't know it was him at the time. But he was, they were working on him when I passed by, and I found out later it was him, and that he didn't survive.
There was a lot of people at the funeral, and there was a lot of media there. It always seems like when something happens in our family, the media is there.
My family was pretty devastated, losing him again. We were just, I think, healing and getting back to normal when he passed.
It was very, very traumatizing. Very traumatizing. The kids were babies.
He died in September, and I was going to turn 4 in December. We were at church. They had us come up to the front, and they did a blessing on us. Then I realized that, he was gone.
I went outside and I saw a balloon up in the air, and I thought, you know, that balloon is gonna go to my dad. I don't think I really even talked about it after that because I didn't feel like anybody really knew how to. So it was just kind of like this unspoken thing for a long time, a really long time. I didn't grow up around people that talked about my dad to me, stories, things like that. A lot of that had to do with, you know, my mom not knowing how to talk about my dad. She just kind of tried to move on with her life the best she can. And I had a really bad stepdad. So we were kind of scared to talk about him.
He did not like my dad or that side of the family. And visits with my grandma and grandpa Stayner were pretty much watched and looked over when we did see them. And that was very rare. My dad was lost to me.
I don't think I really knew everything until I saw the movie. I was probably like 8. I was over at my cousin Kathy's house, and she told me that my dad had a movie. And I was really surprised, and I was like, what? And my dad has a movie. She's like, yeah, like on TV, you know?
I watched it quite a bit. Maybe about 8 or 9 times, maybe 10. I've seen it in my lifetime. Trying to fill questions with answers. When I was a kid, I figured that he was always happy, you know. It was a happy fairy tale kind of, you know, ending. And then when I got older, found out a lot of the things that were in the miniseries was not true.
You're home now, honey.
And it was really hard for me to realize that.
I remember seeing the little boy. I was like, oh wow, so that's my dad. It was stomach turning. I just kind of didn't want to see my dad that way. Because he was just so little, you know, and to think that something like that happened to him, it's not something you want to keep watching, you know? When I got older, whenever I would see him on TV, I would always associate Corey as my dad. Every time I see Corey, I just kind of want to go give him a hug because it reminds me of my dad.
What's one thing you'd like Ashley to know about her father?
That he was the great dad. But I think she knows that. I think she knew he was a great dad. Yeah. She misses him something awful.
After Steven dies, terrible things start all up again.
You got to get the whole story. There are many sides to it. Many, many, many sides.
A mother, daughter, and family friend vacationing near Yosemite National Park in Northern California have vanished.
They were last seen February 15th having dinner at the Cedar Lodge in El Portal on Yosemite's western edge.
Police say they are baffled by the threesome's mysterious disappearance.
How much more could happen in our lives in one lifetime, in one family?